morning, Wareham. It is Friday, November 22nd, and we have a great show here for you. The news headlines, the weather report, and today in history. This morning, Wilson's Legacy, a boat that touched 1,000, in addition to a few other featured programs that we have done in the past. But first, I would like to take this moment to thank Not Your Average Antiques, an antique shop down Cranberry Highway in East Wareham, for donating the props that you see in the morning show. So stay tuned because the weather and the news headlines are next. A fist or two gave away a Wareham resident who tried to rob a convenience store in Powhatan, Rhode Island on November 14th. Patrol officers found a woman matching the robber's description and took her into custody. Rebecca Vasconcelos, 30 years old, of Maple Spring Road, Wareham, was charged with first-degree robbery and conspiracy. Also, no raise for the superintendent of schools, Dr. Kimberly Sheverhood, at the school committee, as the school committee rendered her performance as needs improvement. The superintendent received a 76.38 mark, a drop from her former scores of 82.4 in 2007 and 83 in 2006. This year's results were the product of 5 individual scores ranging from 63.45 to 88.10, which is proficient. Given the score, the superintendent will not be entitled to her annual contractual raises. Chair of the school committee, Michael Ferrari, said that the rating should be looked at as room to grow and improve. The members of the new charter review committee met for the first time on Monday, and made the required revisions to the charter school. The revisions were to make the document easier to understand on the members for the rest of the community. I apologize. The town charter is a legal document that outlines the structure of Wareham's government and outlines the powers and duties of various committees and officials. Within the charter is a provision that requires the Board of Selectmen to appoint a committee to review the charter and submit recommendations, proposed amendments, and revisions to the charter every 10 years. The committee's recommendations are then submitted to town meeting. So they are currently making the charter easy to understand. Okay, and that is all for this morning news headlines. And right now we're going to take a look at our weather forecast. Cloudy today with showers for the afternoon hours, high around 55 degrees, and mostly clear sky tonight with low around 29. Tomorrow mostly sunny despite a few afternoon clouds, high at 46 degrees, and night low at 34 with some rain that will continue on to Sunday, high at 49 and low at 32. And that's all for this morning weather forecast. And we're going to move to our first featured program of the day. Let's take a look at Finding New Sanctuary. Faced with the need and the passion to give back, a brother and sister merged their talents and took action. They founded Finding You Sanctuary, a nonprofit rescuing dogs to help support veterans living with post-traumatic stress.
The first thing I do is I help people connect with their dogs, and the dogs connect with their people. And once that they've done that, then I show them how to read their emotional state of mind and how that once that happens, you can change what you do, because change is inevitable to change what we don't like to see. So after that, then we have the connection to our soul, which is what we all want, to feel at peace, to have joy again.
With decades of experience as a dog behavior specialist, Lynn has a unique method of working with misunderstood dogs. Through her success-proven method, a veteran with PTS can find common ground with a rescued dog.
Yes, I work with the dogs that are so misunderstood, and aggression is the biggest one. But dogs have a big reason for being aggressive. It's what we show them the way. And dogs follow as a pack member does. So the leader, which is usually the human, hopefully, when we have issues or things don't work out right, the way we treat them, nice, good, indifferent, dogs follow us and they learn from us. The biggest need that I found was that veterans with PTSD, their biggest issue is the trust and respect. They need us to respect them so that they can learn to trust and be with us. And their healing, I know, will begin if they can be with dogs that are almost like them. And that's how you pair them. Dogs will choose most of their owners if we allow that. And the ones that choose us, usually the ones that make us work the hardest to be with them because of their behavior. And aggression, fear, insecurities, it's a very big deal with both misunderstood dogs and veterans.
Finding You Sanctuary has two main objectives: reducing the rate of canine euthanasia and improve the coping skills of veterans within their new reality.
So in Massachusetts alone, there are 80,000 diagnosed cases of PTSD. There's several different types of emotional wounds or inner wounds. And then there's TBI, which is traumatic brain injury. And then there's MST, which is military sexual trauma, which most of us would be surprised to hear that 50% of those reported cases are actually male. So there's a lot of issues out there, and what Lynn is able to do, helping people and dogs have a deep connection, and then the dog mirrors the emotional state of the person.
The one thing I do see is that what animals are so capable of, and that's letting everything go, being in the moment. What I see with veterans is how amazingly strong they are, how amazingly giving they are, how they have probably the best understanding of camaraderie, how to work together, how to be in the community. They are amazing as far as giving. And for me, I don't know, I've just seen that veterans with PTS is the biggest thing for me to watch is to help them, help themselves by using animals. It's just my biggest thing, that's what I see.
Once funding is established, the barn will be transformed into a space that will foster the program in addition to housing rescue dogs.
We have a multifold mission. One is if you care about dogs and wish to rescue them.
Help to work with that,
The other one is if you care about veterans and wish to give back to them, serve those who have served us. We also plan on eventually expanding into first responders and so on. And then there's those who believe that there's a connection that needs to be made with the community at large, because it's not just the veteran, it's also their family and friends, and all the people around them are affected by what they've done while they're in service and
when
after
they come
that
back.
point.
Yeah.
So there's three right there. And then the other one is just an overall connection, person to person, animal or person to nature, and the dog is that connection and the way through to that. And that's what Lynn is special about, helping people find that connection.
For more information about Finding You Sanctuary, please visit them online to find out how you can help veterans earn peace at home. Okay, we're going to move to our next featured program of the day, and that is taking a look at the Blue Hill Observatory Forecast Center. to see the great work that they do there.
Hello, this is Queen Vanda from WCTV, and today we're at Milton visiting the Blue Hill Observatory, discussing climate findings and observing weather temperatures. What are the numbers on the thermometer telling us? Is it just New England being New England, or is there a lesson to be learned? So stay tuned, more information coming your way.
So the Earth was eventually going to warm to a certain point, but are we pushing the limits of that? Are we pushing the limits and expediting it? That's the question right now. What we do is we post-analyze information from the day before. So once I have 24 hours, midnight to midnight worth of data, then I can post-analyze it for the day before. But then I'm also doing 3 manual observations during the day. We're in a lovely tower right here. We go up to the top of the tower to get a visual of what's going on with the cloud types, visibility, and then also some markers as well too. And then also we go outside and read our temperatures out in our shelter. And then what we do the next day is put all of that information into a spreadsheet, and then we have a day's worth of information, put it together 2 years, and now we have 132 years of these daily observations.
And that's 132 years of no day missed at work. Every single day you're here recording weather 3 times a day, right?
That's correct. Yep, I haven't been here all 132 of those years.
Very good.
But there has been someone here every single day of the year. That includes Christmas, 4th of July, any holiday you can think of. We have at least someone here for 7 o'clock observation, and then the next day we can fill in information from there. So we are the longest continuously run weather observatory in the United States, because we haven't missed any days since we've been observing, since 1885.
Wow. So tell me, what's the significance of being here every single day observing weather?
There is no holes in our data. So if we had a data set where we were missing days, it's not going to be as consistent. It's not going to be as accurate. So we have a very, very accurate study here. We have one of the most meticulously maintained studies in the United States. They use our information here to build short-term and long-term forecasting models. So what is the weather going to be like next week, and also what the weather is going to be like in 30 to up to even 100 years from now. Not as accurate, of course, the farther you go out, but they still use that information that we gain here at the observatory to get all of those sort of out there on the internet for people to look at. We also talk to local meteorologists and hydrologists. Hydrologists are people who study water. They're interested in us here at Blue Hill Observatory because we have information locally. If we break a record, if we get a significant amount of rainfall, or snowfall is a big one, is it going to melt? Where is it going to melt? Is there going to be flooding? So we are a very big center for extremes. Even though we don't always have extreme weather, people locally are interested when we do have extreme weather, and that helps with sort of disaster relief and also preparation. We allow people to have time to prepare because they can predict when the weather's happening, because we're here studying it every day.
Very good. Now, I'm so happy to be here with you today to talk about weather, about climate. And as I told you before, when I mentioned to people that I'm going to be doing a story about climate, depending on whom you voted for,
yes,
you know, you're either okay for it or you do not want to hear about it. So I just want to hear from you, what are the findings that you guys have collected, what you have noticed about climate, about weather? What are the numbers on a thermometer telling us?
The numbers on the thermometer are telling us we've had an over 3 degrees increase in temperature at Blue Hill Observatory. So we're not the official climate center for the state of Massachusetts. That's at Logan Airport. But for Blue Hill Observatory, we are a very good climate indicator. So they use us to look at the climate, and we've seen an increase in temperatures. We've also seen extremes happening. So we keep talking about extremes today. we see that the winters are getting shorter, but they're getting more extreme. I'm sure most of the people remember 2015 snowpocalypse year.
Yes.
And that's a perfect example of what we've noticed here is we have these 151 inches. That's the amount we got that year. And then the next year we had about 60 inches. So we're having very extreme high amounts of snow to very extreme low amounts of snow in the next couple years. We're predicting something similar to be happening where we might have a bigger snow totals in the winter, but it's going to be happening more in the months of January and February than it is going to be happening December to March, even April we have seen snow into. So the winters are starting later, they're ending earlier, and some years might even be more intense. That's because the ice caps are melting. So we have this extra precipitation, this extra water in the atmosphere, and that water needs to go somewhere. And being on the coast here in Boston, we're one of the places that is going to predictably get more precipitation, as opposed to more inland areas are predictably going to get drier.
So shorter winters, but extreme winters in terms of the cold, in terms of the snow. But, and also you talked about there's something that attributing to what we're seeing. So is it just an argument of that, just the circle of the earth doing its thing, or is it something more?
Yes, so that is the million-dollar question, should we say. Is it man-made, or is it a cycle? And here at Blue Hill Observatory, we're kind of, to keep it all together, we think it's a little bit of both. It is a cycle. We can say, yes, it's a cycle, but we believe that it's expedited due to human impact. We can see when the Industrial Revolution started and the temperature starting to change, the bright sunshine starting to change, even into the 70s with the chlorofluorocarbons and holes in our atmosphere, we saw a big spike in bright sunshine during that time. So we really have to worry about what's happening with the atmosphere. It surrounds us, you know, so is it going to be keeping heat in, which is what's happening right now, and now our Earth is warming, but we might have extreme temperatures where we're getting colder. So you say, oh, global warming, but it was -3 degrees overnight. Where's this global warming? But last year, we had 71 degrees in February. So these are those extremes I'm talking about, where we can go from extremely warm to extremely cold in a drop of a hat, as opposed to our temperatures used to be more consistent. Now we're also seeing a general, though, rise. The month of October this year was our warmest October on record. So out of every single 132 years that we've been having records, we have never had an October so warm. So that's where I'm saying it's starting later. We're warming, but then we're also going to have these extreme snaps of cold, of extreme snow, but then the next year might be an extremely dry and warm year. So it's going to be more up and down is the predictor.
Very good. Now you guys have been here for 120 years?
32.
132 years. Now is there a data that is much older than the one that you guys are providing in order to kind of answer that question of how much we have been contributing to these changes that are happening?
So our study goes back to the 1830s, and there were a few small weather observatories, but the hard part is they weren't continuous. So that's what makes us so appealing as a place, is with those holes in the data set, like I was saying before, that brings more inaccuracies. So we can use data, especially for temperature. We had a local farmer that goes back into the 1930s. He was getting temperature data. But besides that, most of our data is from 1885 to 2017.
Very good. Now, do we have something to worry about? You talked about that this is a natural circle that the Earth is going through. Mm-hmm. However, due to our inventions and progress, we might be speeding up that process, per se. So do we have something to worry about, or should we just kind of relax?
I would say just for extremes wise, we might have different things like some things that haven't been seen in Massachusetts, for instance, tornadoes. Mm-hmm. Tornadoes haven't been seen too much. They, of course, are in Massachusetts. In 2011, we had them out in Springfield. Many people might remember that. But what is happening with these tornadoes in Massachusetts? So that's something that these natural disasters. Again, these extremes might get larger. We had a huge hurricane year this year. So that's another thing we might have to watch out for. Big snowfall years. Also, then in the opposite, small snowfall years can cause droughts. So if we're warm and dry, then we could have a drought, and then the next year we could be, have a whole bunch of precip. So sort of those extremes, I would say just kind of be prepared a little bit more with accident preparedness. Natural disaster preparedness, kind of having maybe a kit in your car or a kit somewhere in your house that is easy to grab.
Well, you talked about extremes. Are we going to see more extremes than what we're seeing? Our winter is going to get harsher than what we're seeing. I mean, outside today it's freezing, like there's no tomorrow. Are we going to see lower temperatures than what we're experiencing? I mean, you're talking about having a bag of emergencies. What are those emergencies looking like?
Yeah, so that's going to be more for snowfall. So for temperature-wise, on the trend, we've been on the up. So usually we can expect to have higher temperatures. This cold snaps, again, that extreme, what's going to happen sort of deal. So this is a little bit of sort of an anomaly, but we might have another big snow year where we could get, they had about 5 feet recently in the Midwest. So sort of having something prepared for if you had to be on a roadway or something like that. I would say all in all, we're on an uprise in temperature though. So it's going to be more of these extreme years where if we get a big snowfall and then that snow melts, it might cause some localized flooding.
All right, and now please let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to continue with more. Okay, and now we're going to take a look at preventing food waste, especially now we are approaching one of our major holidays, Thanksgiving. It's a great idea to actually think of those who cannot afford to have Thanksgiving, cannot afford to have a good meal every single day. So this particular company is working very hard to take those leftovers and disperse them to places where they are greatly needed. Take a look.
So you probably have heard of this before. Finish up your food. Don't you know that there are starving children in Africa? The truth is, we do not have to think about the starving children in African countries in order to understand that food wasting, not only is it wrong, it is immoral. Here's the blunt fact. Americans waste an unfathomable amount of food yearly, and yet over 40 million of our residents are food insecure. Now, how can this be? Is food donation legal? The Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act of 1996, signed to law by former President Bill Clinton, was created to encourage food donation to nonprofit organizations by minimizing liability.
And what it does is it serves as an umbrella law so that all states can be protected against criminal and civil liability when donating apparently wholesome food in good faith. And the reason why we like to stress apparently wholesome and in good faith is because those words are actually quoted in the law. And apparently wholesome really means if I would eat it, if I would serve it to a loved one, it is donatable. If I am donating it in good faith without any malicious intent, it is donatable under the Emerson Act.
It's not like the food industries in America are trigger happy when it comes to wasting food. Oftentimes, these places wish to donate but find themselves battling another obstacle, and that is distribution. And this is where a nonprofit rescuing leftover cuisine comes in the picture.
Or what we found happening over a long period of time was a lot of the venues and caterers were unable to donate the food because the nonprofit organizations weren't able to get an actual driver over there to pick it up. Very often, if you take some of the wonderful organizations that we have locally, like Boston Rescue Mission, Father Bill's, St. Francis House, they do need this food, but they can't always get a driver to physically pick up the food.
Rescuing leftover cuisine is like an Uber or the Lyft of food rescuing services, and it is highly dependent on volunteers, transporting food where it is to where food is needed. So how does it work?
We like to say that rescuing leftover cuisine bridges the gap between the prepared surplus food from restaurants, hotels, events, and those who need it at shelters, soup kitchens, etc., anywhere, any organization that is able to serve this nutritious food to those in need.
The organization carries two different types of operations, the emergency food pickups and the regular food pickups. Lauren is in charge of the Massachusetts regular food pickups, which volunteers can sign up using the online calendar.
To see the calendar, you just want to go out to volunteer, scroll down to event calendar right there, click on that, and my default came up as Massachusetts, but you can also change the default region right over here, and we have a number of different cities that are operating right now with RLC. And so this is a calendar right here, and as you hover over it, it tells you how many slots are left on a daily basis. So you can click right on the day that you want to volunteer, and here are all the events, and all you do is you click on one of those events, and to sign up, you just click on attend event, and it's as easy as that, all set.
For emergency pickup, it runs a little differently. In case of a food pickup,
any volunteer within a 4-mile radius of where the food is being donated will get a text saying, we have food to donate, can you pick it up? Our volunteers then have the option to claim or ignore the pickup.
what are these foods donated to food insecure? There are criteria when it comes to successful food donation.
Food safety is important to us, so we want to make sure that the food is fresh, that if it's frozen, it stays frozen the whole time it comes into our facility, and we're putting it directly in the freezer. And if it's refrigerated food, that it's within its expiration date, and that it's fresh to the smell and fresh to sight.
Western Waterfront Hotel is an example of an emergency food pickup. The Breakaway Carrier is one of the largest delivery companies serving the greater Boston. Today, they are here to pick up an emergency food donation from the Western Waterfront Hotel to Rose's Place, a shelter for women.
So we have the box lunches from yesterday. This is a typical box lunch. We have a bag of potato chips, pasta salad, a cookie, and a roast beef and cheddar sandwich. All fresh, all less than 24 hours old. So box lunches, anytime we have anything left over, the guests don't claim it, we donate it all. And it's great for Rosie's Place too, because they love to individually wrap things in their pantry.
It's a good concept they have, which is they find the person or the organization going to donate the food, and then they find the place close to it to deliver to them. So each time the distance is not that far, so it's easy to do this kind of deliveries. So let's start. So now we're going to Rosie Place to donate the food that we just picked up from the Western. The distance is not that too far. I know we're gonna hit some traffic, especially on Harrison Ave. It's about 2.5 miles away from the Western. You see a homeless man in the cold, you know, in the richest country in the world, and he's looking for food and he's looking for money, you know. It's an older guy. I feel bad for this guy here, really. I see them all the time because I drive around the city and I see all this. Him bring this food inside. Thank you.
Rosie's Place has been in existence since 1974, and our very first day we served a meal, and that is still the signature service of Rosie's Place this 43 years later. Our food program has certainly grown. We serve 104,000 meals a year to women and their children. We also see another 1,900 women a month in our food pantry. So when we can have a food rescue service come and bring us good quality food that we can serve to our guests either in the meals we prepare or in our pantry or to the women staying in our overnight shelter, it really does make a difference. Thank you. Nothing. No, I don't think so.
When you meet a restaurant owner or somebody who works in a hotel in the food service, what's the first thing you tell them? How do you engage them? And what are their questions? What are the frequent questions you hear from them?
The first thing I say to them is the incredible need to use their nutritious food for the local food insecure people who can use it. That is the message that we really want to get across. Then the message that I get across with, on behalf of Rescuing Leftover Cuisine, is that we are an extending hand to the local nonprofits. We want Boston Rescue Mission to have this food. We want Rosie's Place to have this food. We want the Huntington YMCA to have this food. We are the people who can get that food to them because often they are short-staffed and unable to actually get that food, although they have quite a population of people who need this food.
Who are these people in America in need of food aid today? According to Feed America, millions of people are still struggling to get by because of underemployment, stagnant wages, and rising cost of living. In fact, more than 46 million people still turn to Feeding America Network each year for extra help.
The food insecure person today, it is the person who is having mental issues or addiction, and those people are suffering and they need our help. It's also the people who are working every day to support their families, but unable to always make ends meet. And this food is helping those people as well. It's helping everybody. We all need to have a much clearer and open-minded vision of who the food insecure person is.
So we are going to be rescuing from, most of the food is salads and sandwiches. So it's just as simple as grabbing these and all these delicious, healthy salads, throwing them in the bag. I just want to say we just really want to thank Pret for donating all of this food to the shelters and to people in need. I mean, this is really incredible that Pret as an organization does this. And obviously, I think Dana had mentioned this as well, but we could not do this without our volunteers. And they're the ones who make this possible.
St. Francis House is a day shelter, so people who are sleeping in night shelters will come here during the day. And we offer refuge and pathways out of homelessness. The refuge piece is critical in that people need to come here during the day to get their human needs met. That's food, clothing, shelter. In addition to that, we have a lot of programs that help people get their way out of homelessness and into stability. But the food that is brought to us through Pret is really important. We're open from 6:30 in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We serve 700 meals a day. That's a day. That's breakfast and lunch. And the food that comes from Pret augments the food that we need to pay for. We have a budget of $200,000 a year for food, and we would not be able to offer these amazing salads that we're able to serve every day that Pret brings. We would not be able to give individuals a sandwich at 3 o'clock to take with them to hold them over because they are not getting another meal until either the next day or later that evening.
Apart from doing a noble thing, there are great financial incentives to food businesses choosing to donate their surplus foods instead of wasting them.
Just as of a few years ago, there are enhanced tax benefits. So it's actually going to save businesses money by donating surplus prepared food to your local nonprofits using Rescuing Leftover Cuisine. Rescuing Leftover Cuisine, we're able to then provide the documentation needed for their tax records. So all the business has to do is hand over that information to their accountant, and they will be able to get the enhanced tax benefits.
Rescuing Leftover Cuisine has been hard at work growing their Massachusetts branch, starting with Greater Boston. And even though the company is looking to recruit more and more restaurants and food industries into participating, the #1 goal at the moment is recruiting volunteers.
Our goal is to have at least 1,000 throughout Massachusetts. And I'd like to say at least 25% in Boston. We really need to grow the Boston area, the greater Boston area, and all of Massachusetts. Anybody can help. Yes, it is important for our incredible nonprofit organizations like Love and Spoonfuls to rescue those, all that fresh, nutritious food from our local grocery stores, et cetera. But it's also important to keep in mind the quality, nutritious, prepared food that is going to waste. But it doesn't need to be wasted. Rescuing Leftover Cuisine can make it so it's not wasted with your help, with the support of the community, with the support of the local businesses who are willing to partake, and really help us change our whole thought process about food donation and take food donation in Massachusetts to the next level. One thing that I would like to point out is the importance for courier services, limo services, taxi services. We need you. Do you deliver food? We need you. We really want to make this a community effort. We're starting in Boston, but we're spreading out all throughout Massachusetts. So if you're in Wareham, if you are anywhere on the Cape, Worcester, Springfield, Attleboro, no matter where you are in Massachusetts, we need your support. We need volunteers to make this happen.
So get up from the sidelines and start taking action today. Join the many who have said no to food wasting.
I will absolutely continue to do it in the future. It's worked out really well for us so far. We've donated over 1,500 pounds of food, and we've fed a lot of people with that food. We've donated in such a short amount of time. So I'm absolutely looking forward to doing it in the future.
Oh, the need is always there. As I said, we serve 120 or so guests a day, but we have to limit our guests to coming once per month. And that's just because of availability of donations.
For more information on how you can become a donor or a volunteer, please visit Rescuing Leftover Cuisine Massachusetts page online and see how you can stop food wasting, how you can end hunger today.
Okay, a little bit of fast history for you this morning. On this day in sports history, Mike Tyson became the youngest person to win the heavyweight championship in boxing in 1986. We are also going to move on to this day in American history. President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in 1963. He was the 35th president of these United States of America, And also today on American history, one of the first leaders of the United States died in 1783. John Hanson was the first president of the Continental Congress before we had an actual president.
And also for today's birthday, shout out goes to Mrs. Abigail Adams, born in Weymouth, Massachusetts in 1744. She was the second first lady of these United States, married to John Adams, and mother of the sixth president, John Quincy Adams. And that's all for this morning history segment. To learn more cool historical facts, you can go online at history.com. Now is the coffee segment. We're going to take a look at the Wilson's legacy story.
For longer than 3 decades, the residents of Peabody witnessed a legacy in the making. A trimaran carved to a symbol that would unite 1,000. To hear the full story, I visited New Hampshire to meet Carl and Lisa.
Wilson LeBeo was my stepdad. Married my mom about 18 years ago or so.
At Lowell Street in Peabody, Massachusetts, Wilson was building a 45-foot Roger Simpson trimaran, a lifelong project that started back in 1984 with the help of his father. And after 32 years in the making, a freak accident took Wilson's life, putting his dreams into a halt.
So he was working in the backyard and he was cutting brush right in front of the boat along the brook. And we don't really know totally exactly what happened. My mom called me and said he hadn't been in the house. And I said, well, call the police right away.
Wilson died in August of 2017 at the age of 76. His wife Peggy died months later from an illness. Leaving behind was Wilson's unfinished dream, Foxy Lady.
What did you guys know about the project? How invested were you?
Well, that's really why I was so passionate at the end here to get the boat done and to find a good home for the boat, because I really wasn't very invested in the boat, and I felt really bad about that. I think other family members and kids, other stepchildren that Wilson had growing up, probably put a lot of time into helping him with the boat.
Tell us about what this boat, you said it meant so much to him. What was his vision? The boat is humongous.
Yeah. So the boat, he had studied different options to build. He wanted to obviously have a boat that he could sail and race on the weekends. And he decided on that particular style of boat, the trimaran, because it gave him the ability to have a cruising boat that he could, you know, take long trips on if he wanted to, but he could also race it on the weekends. And so he somehow came across some plans for this Roger Simpson design. You know, Wilson had a different idea in mind of what he wanted to do with the boat. So most people, I was told, build a foam boat, and this is a cold molded boat.
Yeah.
Nobody would really build a cold molded boat because it would take too much time and it would be too expensive, even though it's beautiful.
Wilson's design exceeded every expectation.
He shaped the hull into a different design, and the wings and the armors are a different design. So when I actually started to research the boat to try to find one, I couldn't find anything that looked like that boat. So you think of all the images on Google of all the boats in the world, and like you couldn't find another one like it. If you Google Roger Simpson Leahona, now you'll see Wilson's boat.
So when you lost Wilson and then you lost your mother, then the boat was left behind, and as you said, you knew he was working on it, but you weren't cueing in all the details, all the plans.
Right.
So to walk us the steps. You wanted to sell the boat, but we wanted to find the right person.
Right. Well, you know, you kind of walk out to the boat and you take it all in, you know, and you're like, oof, where do I start, right? And so you kind of look around inside the boat and see where he was at. So he had his wire list out, and he had all his wiring tools, and he was pulling wire and starting to wire everything up. And, you know, looking at the outside of the boat, you could see that it was weathered and at the point where it really needed attention on the outside.
As beautiful as the boat was, Carl and Lisa were facing one big question: what to do with the boat? Having no passion to own a boat, nor the funds to finish and maintain the boat, they started looking for the one who would not only buy Wilson's boat, but see his dreams into fruition.
It was kind of an odd duck, I was told many times. Well, if you're going to find a trimaran person, you know, that's a needle in the haystack, you know, because it takes a special person that's going to want that boat.
The clock was ticking faster than they could manage. They had a year to make a decision.
One of the last people that was really serious that was on the boat from like October, November of last year into May of this year, he had come and sort of done his survey, cleaned up the boat, helped reorganize everything, and then he was actually looking at another boat to take a look at the rigging to see how he was going to rig this boat.
Oh, okay.
And they offered him that boat for the cost of the move. So when he backed out at the beginning of June, we were like devastated because we had just let him go the entire winter without advertising the boat to anybody else or working with anybody else to take the boat.
And this time the boat was still at the property, right?
Correct.
And you guys had already sold the house.
Right.
Yeah, so we had till August 10th to get the boat out of the property, or we would have to salvage it and split the proceeds with the owner of the house.
Yeah.
So you were looking for somebody, the right person. You thought you found the right person. You stopped advertising. That deal fell through.
Right.
Now you're desperate.
Right. But there was a gentleman before Garth that we weren't quite sure about. He was young, he was 24, had a lot of passion. He worked at a boatyard, did fiberglass work, that sort of thing. He was an Eagle Scout. His name was Jesse from Maine. And Jesse had big plans for the boat. And he actually had invested you know, money into the final survey. He invested money into the boat move because he had to have a deposit down. So we felt really bad for Jesse. He ran into some financial issues like a week before the boat was supposed to move and said that he couldn't do it. And I had gone down to visit with Tim. So Tim was a homeowner. We sat down on the back deck and I said, so Tim, we're not going to make the 10th. What would you like to do? You want to cut the boat up, salvage it? He said, nope. He goes, we can't cut that boat up. He said, Wilson will haunt me the rest of my life. And I said, okay. So he said, try to find another person to take the boat.
You were at his mercy.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely, yeah.
And with the opportunity, Carl and Lisa went back to the old list, looking at those who had shown earnest interest.
I was just going on all the Facebook pages that had those, and we basically at that point had come up with the idea that we would give the boat away if somebody would pay to move it.
And finish it and not salvage it.
Yeah.
So was it a desperate decision or what was it?
Well, we were told that the boat needed like $50,000 to $75,000 worth of work. And so we thought it only fair to whoever the potential buyer, taker, if you will, even though we weren't selling, but whoever was going to take the boat needed to have at least that jump start, you know, with just the investment of the move in order to kind of make it feasible. But what needed to go along with that would be the knowledge to do it, because You really, if you paid somebody to do all the work on the boat, you might spend a couple $100,000, and the boat would never be worth a couple $100,000. So who would do that?
They found not only one person, but two, Dave and Court.
It could have maybe gone either way. I think Wilson's craftsmanship and the uniqueness of the boat and the whole story really got to David. You know, it's like he saw the passion that Wilson, you know, had put into the boat with the construction, and just, I think deep down inside, being a boat guy, he said, no, this boat can't get cut up.
And so the challenge began, the actual logistics to how they will move a 32-year-old boat off the property. Since Wilson's boat was wider than the traditional trimarans, the permit to transport it would have to come straight from the governor's office.
Maybe about 3 weeks before we were going to move the boat, I got a call from Cindy at Brownell, the boat moving company, and she said, we got a little bit of a problem. The boat's 30 feet wide, and Mass DOT only allows 16-foot wide loads over the road.
Through the connection of an old friend, Carr was able to get in touch with Senator Tarr's office, which then he was connected with the head of Massachusetts Department of Transportation.
And Mr. Fody wrote back and he said, Mr. Hanselman, he said, I've lived on the North Shore a good part of my life, and I've traveled down Lowell Street, and I know exactly where your boat is, and when you guys are ready to move your boat, we'll have your permit ready to go.
While the planning was taking place, Wilson's boat was garnering attraction of its own. Neighbors and strangers sharing their memories of Wilson and what the boat meant to them. So when the moving day was scheduled, Carl, Lisa, David, and Court found themselves surrounded with strangers eager to help.
That was surreal. You just can't imagine, like, the events in those 2 days, right? So it started on Tuesday morning with the crane. And so the excitement of lifting that boat like 65 feet up in the air and over the top of the trees was like, what's gonna happen? What if they drop the boat? It had never moved out of that spot, like for 30, yeah. So just to see it move from that spot to the driveway was a big deal.
And just to see how big it was when it was up in the air coming down beside that barn was like,
yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh, it's huge. It was like you thought it was just gonna go right on top of the barn. It was so big.
Yeah. My son and my son-in-law Keenan, we stopped because they had to drop signs for the boat to go by. The hulls were so wide when it went up onto 128. So as the boat went by, we ran out, put the signs back up, and screwed them back together. So we were sort of following the boat along.
And there it was, a moment 32 years in the making. Wilson's boat touching the water.
For me, it was a bigger deal watching the rudder hit the water, because that was like the first thing that touched the water. Everybody was excited when it floated in the water and stuff. I was just like, this boat, just to touch the water is incredible, right? So that was a big deal for me. I yelled when the rudder hit the water, but it finally eased down into the water.
For now, we're going to take it down to Marathon, Florida, in the Middle Keys, and we'll probably spend a year, maybe two, making everything complete. You know, when Wilson died, everything was left unfinished. So much has been done, but there's still a lot of work to do. So, but even as she is now, just under motor without the sails. I would still take her out on day trips or, local things in the Keys. She's got a fantastic motor. She's a lot of fun on the water, so I don't feel like I have to wait for it to be done before she can start seeing some adventures.
Well, we have been looking for a larger vessel, and this boat suits pretty much any and all of our needs for what we want to do sailing and cruising. And like I said, the craftsmanship of the build was so well done that, and a possibility of if nobody took it, it could be cut up and parts, the engine salvaged, and all those years of work and would just go right down the drain. So I felt the need to save the boat from the landfill.
When you got the boat, what did you have to do in order to get into the water for the first time?
Ooh, that's a long list. We did a lot of fiberglass repair. Well, we spent 10 days working on the boat, mostly every night till midnight. And we'd get up, and it was chilly here, so we'd get up around 8 and start at it again. And when they came for the boat to transport it to the launch ramp at 1:30 in the morning, we were still working on it. And we were like, holy cow, we're out of time. So we got to the launch ramp and worked maybe another hour or so. We got about 2 hours of sleep and got up and started working again. Even right when they were ready to launch, I was still installing like the strainer for the water intake for the engine. I'd forgotten about. And we had it was a variable pitch 3-blade prop, and we had one of the blades backwards. And one of the crew members of Brownell, the transport crew, had noticed that, so they focused on that and got that proper for us because we were just so tired we couldn't even brain it. I could look at instructions and just go, eh.
This is definitely something that an individual would craft. This is more artwork than factory.
Where are some places that you could point out to say this is pure Wilson?
The bones in the boat. He put in an escape hatch, and that's cool in and of itself. But anywhere where we might take water from, say, an open window or something like that, instead of it running all the way down or sitting on the ledge, he drilled holes so that it runs down and instead of staying on. So he thought of all the contingencies for if this happens and if that happens. And
how long do you think this boat will last?
To answer that question, easily 30 years. Even though this boat is already like 32 years into its build, it was, I think the first 15 years, it was built inside a building and then assembled 3 pieces into one, and then it was tarped and covered for winter, which really helped. Even Carl and Lisa, after Wilson's passing, they would cover the boat for the winter to keep the rain and snow and whatnot off of it. So that really helped save this boat. If it was just left out uncovered, it would not be in the shape that it's in now.
Both of your hearts are rest to know that you have done Wilson proud and you have honored his wishes. Do you feel more at peace?
I do, for sure, because I felt like that I couldn't really relax or think about a lot of other stuff until that boat was sort of safe and moved and knew it was going to continue its life. I just felt like I had to do it, and people said that they couldn't believe that we put that much time and effort into it and all the hurdles and everything that we went through. Looking back on it now, of course it was well worth it, you know. It was I said, aside from raising you know, 2 great kids and my family and everything else, maybe one of the most important things that I ever did in my life was save that boat. You know, I felt that passionate about it, you know, and yeah, not having spent as much time with Wilson as I should have. You made it up. I felt like, you know, a lot of people worked on the boat, a lot of people invested a lot of time, but Lisa and I got it in the water, and I just felt like that was our contribution to the boat.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people, you know, felt sad that, you know, Wilson never got to see the boat in the water or never got to sail his boat. But I just really feel like that was his mission on Earth, was to build that boat, just to touch all the people that he touched along the way.
Thank you so much for being with us this morning. If you missed us, the show will re-air this evening at 6 p.m. We'll be back here on Monday with plenty more. Have a pleasant weekend, Wareham. See you next week. Bye.